Today's question has to do with the 2-year ownership and use rule for your primary residence. People are wondering if that rule, which allows you to shelter capital gains, has stayed for 2018. The good news is that rule is still in effect for 2018. There was some talk about changing this to 5 years that you had to occupy the home before you could shelter those capital gains, but it has remained at 2 out of the last 5 years. Now let me explain the rule. If you own a property and live in it as your primary residence for 2 out of the last 5 years, you're allowed to shelter up to $250,000 in capital gains on the sale of that home at the sale. If you're married, you can double this to $500,000. But you must have lived in the home as your primary residence for a complete 2 years out of the last 5 years. If that's your only home, it's pretty easy to satisfy that ownership and use test since you were living there when you bought it. You can buy a home, live in it, fix it up for 2 years, sell it, and shelter the capital gains. You can then buy another home and do it again if you want. You can use this exemption over and over, but you must remain in the home at least 2 years. Now, if you bought the home and you lived in it for 2 years, and then you moved out and are living somewhere else, the 5-year requirement comes into play, meaning it must have been in the last 5 years that you occupied the home for more than 2 years as your primary residence. And just to recap, that's $250,000 in capital gains per person, or if you're married, up to $500,000. What this means is, let's say you bought a home 3 years ago, you moved in, you put money into fixing up the kitchen, and now the home's worth $80,000 more. If you put the house on the market and sell it for $80,000 more, you can shelter that capital gains, no 15% capital gains tax, on the sale of your primary residence. So make sure if you're buying or selling a home that you note this in your paperwork and with your tax accountant. It's a very useful rule for people, and one that is stayed in effect even with the 2018 tax reform package. Great question, and thank you for asking.